Hello, and welcome to the Reimagining Therapy podcast. I am your host, Deanna Avis, a coach and therapist specializing in working with neurodivergent people, navigating the intricacies of unmasking and trauma recovery. And I'm super excited to be joined today with Christina Theo. She is a coaching psychologist who I met on LinkedIn a while ago, and we've been supporting each other, commenting on each other's posts, diving into online discussions around the different roles of coaching and therapy and psychology, because the field is, the way I see it, a lot more complicated than it needs to be. And so the aim of this discussion is to try and kind of just tease out what are some of those nuances of the differences, and how can we give people who need coaching or therapy or support from a psychologist clarity about what the right type of help for them is and who they should go to. So without any further ado, Christina, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, so firstly, thank you for inviting me on your podcast, Deanna. I'll give a brief introduction just to explain what coaching psychologist is, because we're not very well known yet. So I'm somebody who uses psychology and science to look at the way we think, how we behave, and how we experience our emotions. So the reason why I use science and psychological theories and approaches is because it means that I've got a better chance of helping my clients achieve the outcomes that they want to achieve, whatever that might be. And outcomes are normally around performance based, how they're doing at work, how they're doing in life, whether they're able to achieve the things that they want to achieve in their relationships with their children or loved ones, the hobbies that they want to enjoy, and their overall well-being. And I specialize in chronic pain, a very specific type of chronic pain that hasn't occurred because of disease. Unfortunately, all pain's produced by the brain, but the brain sort of decides that it's going to misfire and give people a lot of pain and confuse people as to why they're feeling this way. And I supervise other practitioners, and I also work with them to support their own practices and their businesses, because sometimes practitioners can't charge what they want to charge, don't design the services in the way they want to design them for people, or very scared of getting on social media to be visible. So I work with them to help them build their confidence, speak their truth, and be able to get across what they want to say to other people so they can help them.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for that. And it sounds like there's lots of crossover between the people that you serve and the neurodivergent community as well, because so many neurodivergent folks are in this state of kind of chronic burnout and overwhelm, and then having that, like, basically having chronic pain alongside neurodivergent conditions and the physical effects of everything that's going on for you. So I think this is a really, really relevant topic for so many people. So in terms of, how you got into this work, what was your journey to becoming a coaching psychologist?
So I won't give you my whole history from when I was 20 and I did psychology. I'm going to go from 2018. So I have a background in psychology and I've always worked in healthcare, but I've mainly focused on designing mental health and physical health services and working with lots of different types of professionals. But in 2018, prior to 2018, I started to get very unwell. I just thought I had a really bad virus for many, many months. And I worked in a very stressful environment. I worked for a consultancy company and my health was going down. I was very burnt out because I was working very long hours. I'm a I was people pleaser, needing external validation, wanting to get the promotions and the pay rise. And I put everything into that because I felt that that was my worth. That comes from my cultural upbringing, being told that I needed to do these things by my father to be somebody, to make money. And so this pushed me
I'm so
deeper and
intrigued by that.
deeper.
Can we pause there for a second? Because
Yeah.
I'm just curious about the link with your cultural upbringing. Because basically, I'm a child of immigrants as well, so there's this expectation that your
Yeah.
value is in your performance, and like A minus
Yes.
is not good. It's
Oh,
not good
yeah.
enough, basically. So like how that's
It's
impacted you, I'm just so curious to hear.
It had a massive impact. So I'm a second generation Greek. My father came to this country. He wasn't a child, he was sort of a young adult, but he felt that he felt he had to make something of himself. His worth is defined by his profession, what he earns, his expertise. You'll find that a lot of cultures are like this and they really push their kids, especially being the firstborn. You get pushed Persian, 99% is not enough. And this really impacts your self-worth and culture. How I was brought up is you got to be the good girl. You don't defy anybody. You don't talk back. You don't answer me back. You don't challenge me. I'm your father. So, you must do as I say. So you must people please. You are not worthy unless you do these things and achieve. And this really just penetrated into my whole being, how I approached my work, how I approached leadership, how I approached my relationships. And in that, unfortunately, was I got into an abusive relationship. I married someone who unfortunately was abusive towards me. And so that way of bringing a child up and giving those messages to that child can be very damaging. It doesn't build their resilience, actually. It really caused problems later on in life. I didn't have confidence, I lacked self-worth, and also my parents weren't able to express certain emotions like love just because of their upbringing and the trauma that they've faced in their lives. So I didn't know what it felt like to be loved. I didn't have a good role model for that. So it's important to know I'm not criticizing my parents. I understand why they are the way they are, and I accept that. But that did lead to a collapse in 2018 where I overworked, I overpleased, I was being abused. I had a young child, a toddler. And when I mean I collapsed, I got on a train to Loughborough for a client meeting with an NHS trust. I thought I was going to vomit and pass out. I couldn't cope. It felt like someone was pumping drugs into me. And the colleague I was with said, "You don't have a choice. You have to go. You're the only one that can deliver this. It's very high stakes." So I was pressurized. Think of the client, they're in a bad situation. So therefore, I am betraying myself for the client's needs and not looking at my needs. I wasn't fit to work that day, but I got on that train. I delivered that presentation. I don't know how. I don't know how I got to the end. I don't know what I said. Everyone was happy and they were clapping and there was all smiles. And I got home and I never returned to work. I became debilitated for about a year. And that was a journey to my own healing and to exploring modalities that would support my healing and then go on to train to specialise in chronic pain and trauma. So I went deeper into sort of how physical and mental health through my own lived experience.
That resonates so much. And when we were first talking, I was getting major firstborn vibes from you. And I was like going to ask, are you a firstborn? Because it's like we have this radar, so many high achieving, perfectionistic, recovering people pleasers. So many of us are firstborns, obviously not all of us. And so you've really lived the journey both physically and mentally in terms of reaching that rock bottom and then seeing the links with your past and how some of the behaviors that led you to overwork and suppress your own needs were linked with that, and then the physical and mental effect that was having on you.
Yeah, and also the other thing that I didn't mention is I was always taught to care for other people, be charitable, be kind. And the problem is that that didn't serve me well in my relationship because I was always trying to support the other person. But also a part of me wanted to fix the other person. Big learning lesson. We don't fix other people. We resolve the unresolved issues, emotional issues for ourselves. And what I was seeking to do is try to fix somebody who didn't want fixing. And actually, I should have just focused on myself. So that came from support other people.
Yeah, totally. So much of what you're saying in terms of the cultural upbringing really resonates. One of the things when I was writing an essay ages ago, I came across was research that had been done with children of people from collectivist countries when they moved to more individualistic cultures, and that basically our well-being is impacted with that difference in kind of cultural orientation, because collectivist parents are teaching you how to thrive in a collectivist culture where everyone's thinking for the good of the group, and therefore you do need to conform, but then the payoff is that the group takes care of you. Not that in an individualistic culture, you're sacrificing yourself, but you're not getting the support of the group because we're a fractured society. Disconnect that also causes a lot of the pain.
100%, because in Cyprus, people live in close-knit villages and they all support each other and people don't go without. I'm talking from the past, things have changed. The country looks a bit different to what it was when my dad was a child there and when I would go there as a child. It still has that, in some places, but coming here, it's fight for survival. It really can be like
Absolutely.
that,
Yeah.
especially in London. So it's very different. There isn't a village or community that's just there to support you. So you're not getting the support back, and you
Mm.
have to effectively go and find and build your village with the right people. But that takes time to learn how to do that and who the right people are to do that with.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So when it came to your own training as a coaching psychologist, I mean, that's a relatively new field. Not a lot of people have heard about it.
Mm.
There's just like a huge variation because you see like on Instagram an ad for like, do this course and it's like,
Yeah.
what on earth?
People call themselves, they slap the title coach on without having any understanding of what that means and what that relation should look like with a client. What I've been observing on social media and in discussions with people is that someone's had a lived experience and decided, actually, I want to coach people through. No, actually, what you're doing is mentoring people. That's mentorship. It's like me saying, I'm going to tell you how to become a coaching psychologist or set up your business or do something. I'm not coaching you, I'm mentoring you how I did it. That's different. That has a different dynamic. People are selling this and they don't have, if look, there is something very valuable about training, okay? You get to understand ethics. You get to understand what's ethical and what's not ethical practice, how we communicate, how we work with clients. If you've had no training as a coach or psychologist or therapist and you go and do these things, you're not understanding where the ethical sort of boundaries are. You're also not being taught how to communicate with people. Maybe you also haven't been taught how that you can project all your crap on somebody else. If you've had no training, you've not been observed. So I've been observed by the trainers and I've been told whether I meet a standard or not and how I need to improve. So you want third party feedback on how you are coaching people. You also want to have some evidence that sits behind the approaches that you're using. You also want to understand what works for whom, within which context and why. This is why some approaches are not appropriate for individuals who've experienced trauma, individuals who've got ADHD, autistic, or other particular neurodivergent. But okay, because I don't see it on social media. So, and then you call yourself a coach and you take on clients, and you could end up re traumatizing them because you don't know how to effectively communicate or to meet them where they're at, or you're not, people don't intentionally want to cause harm to people, but there's so much to coaching that you have to be mindful of. And so if you don't have a supervisor, even qualified coaches don't need to have supervisors. It's not mandated. I am by the British Psychological Society. I have to engage regularly and have a log, and the BPS need to see my log.
Pause
So
there
you don't,
because just in
yeah.
terms, I know what you mean by supervision, but I'm
Oh
guessing some
yeah,
of our listening might
won't
not even
know.
know what that means.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think just in terms of it would be really useful to have some context. So what is supervision? Also,
yeah.
I'm really interested in drawing out the difference between a coach and a mentor. People
I've
don't even
said a lot
realize.
there.
There's
Yeah, I've said a lot there. So let's go with supervision. Supervision is where you go to somebody else who's trained as a supervisor. My supervisor is not necessarily trained in chronic pain techniques. She's a psychotherapist and coaching psychologist. I take something that's come up with my client and I wasn't too sure how to work through it. And I have someone who's independent who can help me work through that and challenge me. So it's about looking at how we're doing that ethically. I go to the supervisor and we explore, am I doing this ethically? Am I looking at and thinking through it from all the different angles? They help you do that. Maybe the client didn't get the outcome that we hope that they would achieve. Then they help you unpick that. So it's about, are you using the right methods for, the right ways of working for that specific client? Are you operating ethically? Is there some research and evidence that backs up the way you're working? And also, there's an opportunity for you to talk through how that client may have had an impact on you or what's going in your life, because you've got to be mindful not to project any of your own stuff or baggage onto the client. So it really is a independent third party that's helping you hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. It also feels to me like a combination of having like a mentor and that accountability person, because it's someone who's like further ahead typically than you are on the journey and experienced in the field that you are. So it's not, because I think like a lot of coaches think, oh, well, I have a chat with my coach friends and that's all right. And it's like, that's not what supervision is. It's much more structured than that. There's a certain amount of minimum hours you need for client hours, and there's a format in which it needs to take to make sure that there is accountability and ethics. I guess this kind of leads me on to my next question, which is like, the other big coaching body that is known. I mean, there's kind of two main big ones that I think of, which is the EMCC, the European Mentorship and Coaching Council, and the ICF, the International Coaching Federation. What's the difference between those and the BPS, the British Psychological Society's coaching psychologist?
So I can only comment. I'm a member of the ICF, the International Coaching Federation, and the British Psychological Society, because I've done accredited training with both. So I can only comment on what I've experienced myself. So when I went through trauma-informed training that was accredited by the International Coaching Federation, I felt that we didn't necessarily coach with science. We didn't necessarily coach with an evidence base. So though they both have, the British Psychological Society and the ICF have a set of ethics, and they're pretty similar, I didn't feel that I was coaching with science necessarily. I was learning the arc of a session, how a session would run with a coaching client. So it kind of looks like you kind of ask the client what they want to work on in that session, and it goes through a whole process of helping them to get to that point at the end where they've sort of learned something new about how to do something or a way forwards. The biggest difference from me is that you don't have to be a psychologist to be an ICF member, which you do with the British Psychological Society, and that you do have to have taken a accredited training, whether it's undergraduate, like a degree, or postgraduate, like a master's, for the BPS to accept you as a coaching psychologist. So the difference is, I didn't feel that with the ICF, we were really getting tools and techniques that were science-based. Now, I know that some courses do, but the one that I did wasn't necessarily incorporating that. It was more about teaching you how to coach. And also it was very pure coaching. So when I would try and coach with a psychological lens, it wasn't kind of working for them. They sort of were a bit critical about that. Well, I need to coach from a psychological lens because I want to help the client achieve specific outcomes. So that's the biggest difference for me.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about that, because I think that a lot of people, both on the client and the coach side, are frustrated with this kind of pure coaching definition that the ICF is kind of promoting. And I'm an ICF member. Like, there's lots of positive things about them, and this is not to take anyone down. No. But these are differences. And I think sometimes people use the word coach, but we're not actually defining what do we mean by coaching. And it means, so how do you see coaching as a coaching psychologist versus pure coaching? What are the differences? So there are these different views of coaching where the ICF has a certain point of view where the coach is, I guess, a bit more, the role is to ask questions and to not offer any of their own kind of self in that. That's a massive generalization. That's not strictly true. Obviously, we have our presence and all of that, but the role of the coach is to ask questions and to draw on the client's resources so that the client is essentially coaching themselves through and getting the answers from their own.
Yes.
And so how does that differ from the way you see coaching as a coaching psychologist?
It's the same. I'm not there to give my opinion or tell the client what to do. So when I ask questions, I'm asking from a specific approach. So it could be when I'm asking a question, I'm deciding to ask from a somatic approach. Somatic means body. So I'm asking the client what sensations are coming up for them as they engage with this memory. Maybe they had a disagreement with their boss. Instead of thinking it from a cognitive through our thoughts, I just ask them to drop into their body. I support them to do that. So I guide them in that, how to do that, and ask them questions about what it feels like in their body. So they're still getting the answers for themselves, but there is an element of having a framework and guiding them through the practice. So think of it like a tennis coach. They're teaching you and coaching you through specific techniques. I'm guiding you and coaching you through specific techniques. but I'm doing it in the way in which I'm asking you a question to help you get there. There is an element of what we call psychological education. So in a session, I'm going to explain to you after we've done something why I brought that up, why we engaged in that specific activity, why I took them through that. Because research evidence tells us that it improves the client's chances of achieving the outcome or making progress if they have an understanding of why the coach or even the therapist is doing what they're doing. It's to take them on the journey. We go on a journey together. You're walking the path as the client, but I'm guiding you through the way in which I'm asking the questions. And the way I ask the questions is based on a specific psychological framework or evidence base that I'm using. Coaching is how we ask questions and how we help the client use their internal resources, but I'm also sharing my internal resources and my knowledge and expertise with you as the client so you can start to develop yours on that journey.
So what I'm hearing is that there's a similarity in that both ICF coaches and coaching psychologists are there to ask questions, not to impose a certain point of view on the client. But what I'm hearing with you is that there's a purposefulness to the questions that you're asking. Whereas in some coaching spaces, I have seen people sell like, here's a deck of coaching questions and use it with a client. And it's like, what, you just randomly shuffle and pull something out? Like there's kind of not that framework that you are talking about there. It does seem it can be like the coach has just read something on Instagram or their coach did it with them. And so this is the direction they're taking it. But why are they taking that direction?
Yeah, so this is interesting because when we trained, trained in my specific cohort for trauma-informed coaching, people wanted to have like a set of questions next to them. It doesn't work like that. You need to have a framework that you're working with as a coach. So I might feel that for that specific client, the framework I'm going to use is based on, well, we're using a framework to learn how to express our emotions, okay, identify and express them. So there's a whole framework that will go through the session, and I've got to get them from A all the way to B. But I don't have a set of questions. I have to listen to what the answer is. And then the question needs to build on to that answer by taking them deeper or progressing them forwards. So it is based on what the answer is that comes back from the client. I'm working within a framework, keeping towards getting the client to identify their emotion, to be able to express it, and then come to some peace with having expressed that emotion, has some level of satisfaction about expressing that emotion. So yeah, there's no set of questions. That's why I don't believe in designing courses for people, because everyone's different. You don't know what's going to come up. Your job as a coach is to respond to what the client is telling you in the way in which you craft your question. And one of the key things that I tell the people that I supervise is intuitive. You have to be listening at such a deep level. You have to be embodying what that person is telling you. It's really hard to describe what that feels like. It's as if, like, when you describe something to me in your answer, I can feel it inside of me. And then I know naturally what the next question's going to be. People are early on in their training or career as a coach get too much in their head. Oh, what's the next question? Before the client's even answered the first one. So it's about pacing and being attuned and aligned with your client. It takes lots of practice.
Yeah, completely. When I was training as a coach, I remember they said the most important thing the client said was just 2 seconds ago. Like, that's the thing you need to respond. But sometimes we hear a thing and we're like, oh, I want to come back to that. And we're holding this and missing what they're saying. So it's being present with them and authentic.
Yeah, that's key. And one of the key things about being present with your client is that you're actually able to be present with yourself, and you've worked on yourself to be able to do that. So you've connected your brain and your nervous system, your body together, that you are very in tune and in touch with your own emotions, your own thoughts. Because if you don't know what that feels like, how do you know whether the client's achieved that? And how do you know how to respond to them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Living that presence of what you're teaching them. Not teaching, but you know what I mean?
Coaching them through.
You said something, it was when you were saying how there's this idea that everyone needs to create a course. And can you speak to how you view sales in the coaching industry and how your ethics and approach has informed the way that you sell and build relationships with clients?
So I've been observing this a lot. A few years ago, when I wanted to come back to work after I'd worked on myself, I would appoint mentors or go in courses about how to use social media. And I started to get this real grating feeling inside of me. People were using what's called behavioral psychology, the way human beings consume. So the way they buy, the way they purchase. They were using what we've learned in psychology about how people do that to manipulate them to buy their products. And it made me feel sick. I would get this grating feeling. I refuse to do it. Absolutely not. So they will use specific techniques. So they will use a scarcity. I think is that the correct word, scarcity? I've probably not pronounced it properly, where they'll say only 10 spots left or it's going to go up in price. No, it's dishonest. You're just getting people to jump on it. I don't want that. I don't want people to jump on it and pay me money and come into sort of work with me if they haven't made a well-informed decision. My job is to support the person who wants to work with me to make a well-informed decision about whether this is the right fit for them. I just allow people to talk, tell me what their problems are. I give them space. Other people will say, don't get people on a call. Don't give them the 15 minutes. Don't give them 30 minutes of your time. They should know if they want to purchase your services. No, sorry, I disagree. We need to have human connection. People need to build trust. Oh, people can build trust because they can consume your social media. No, no, not the same as having a conversation with me. So I've purchased social media training, one which was $6,000 over 3 months. I'm not allowed to say which one it is, but that's all the tactics they were teaching. It was disgraceful and horrible, and I don't agree with it. So people are vulnerable. People come to you because they're vulnerable, they've gone through something, and they trust that you're going to be able to help them. And by exploiting their vulnerability to get them to pay is completely unethical. And a lot of coaches do this, and I don't agree with it. We want to be able to help someone make a well-informed decision about whether what you're selling to them is right for them. And that takes a conversation. And if you can't be bothered to give someone 15 minutes of your time, then you shouldn't be doing the job you're doing, because it's about human connection. So I do give people time, and some people need 30-minute consultations to be able to make the decision. People come to me, they've spent thousands of pounds with other coaches and got burnt. So therefore they're naturally apprehensive to want to spend more money. So my job is to just be human and build trust with them, and they will make their decision in their own time. Be patient.
How do you structure your client work? Do you have like a set of sessions that people are buying, or does it vary depending on the client? Like because that's the other thing I've noticed, and it's something I've been experimenting with in my practice, because a lot of the dogma in the coaching world is make a big high fee package, and you're trying to sell high fee coaching. 90% of your time trying to convince people to buy this thing that's high fee so that you can coach less of the time. And for me, it's like, well, I actually quite like being with clients, and I don't want to spend all my time selling, and I want it to be easy for them to buy. So I've been moving away from that and going, why shouldn't it be less? Like, if they want to continue working with me, I don't want to lock someone into 12 sessions if they only need 3 or 6. People stay for a long time because it's valuable, not because they've been forced into like a package.
So I work on what the evidence base tells us about chronic pain, those with chronic pain, and the techniques that I use, how long it takes to retrain the brain and the nervous system. So before, people were able to just spot purchase, and sometimes there wasn't a commitment and they weren't getting to where they wanted to get to. So I've spent a whole year reflecting on conversations with clients, observing how people purchase services and what they've said to me in feedback. And so now I offer, it's not a program, it's bespoke to the client, and it's 12 weeks, but within those 12 weeks, sometimes it's spread over 16 weeks. It's a journey. They get to choose where they want to meet with me once a week, twice a week, whether that's for 1 hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours. They get to control their healing journey. They get to So we design it for them. So I say you've got 12 weeks of support. I work on a sliding scale. It's from 2,500 to 5,000. If people are earning six figures and have disposable income, they pay at the top end. I ask people to think about whether it's affordable to them, to their family, what sacrifices would they need to make, and they don't need to give any evidence why they just want to pay the 2,500. I also work on a payment plan. And then if people can't afford the administrative fee, I drop it. Some people on universal credit, they cannot afford that. So I will say, right, well, I'm not charging you an administrative fee to pay in three goes. I will absorb that cost and take the risk. I'm very flexible, but it needs to be at least 12 weeks of support, because that's how long it's going to take for your brain to start retraining itself to have different habits and ways of being and sort of breaking the pain cycle. So I make it very clear this is how long this work will start to give you the foundations to move forwards. And then I ask, people then get to design with me how long they can manage per week. And then some people want to have maybe 1 hour or 90 minutes a week, but then offline support where they've got a little bit of homework that they agree to do. And I review it and I talk to them over email. The evidence says that we need to have engaged in this type of support for at least 12 weeks to start to deliver, get the outcomes that we want to get for ourselves. This is working much better because it's just helping people feel that they're in control. Some people can't manage intense sessions. They're in a lot of pain, they can't focus, so they want to break their sessions up across the week. It's not, I don't charge per hour, it's just 12 weeks of support, whatever that might look like for you. And that's how I do it. That seems to be working out much better. You said that would be considered a high ticket offer. That's what social media would call it. But I'm also now looking at how I can provide more lower cost or free resources. That's something I'm looking at doing and designing for people. So I also spent last year giving 10 free workshops in the community to introduce people into this work, to give them an opportunity to access something that they don't normally get to access, that they're not aware of. And I help people behind the scenes. There's certain people I support that don't pay me anything. I choose to work with them. This is typically people who want to get experience and expertise to help other people, but don't have access to the training that I've had because maybe they're from Pakistan or another country. So I do try my best with the limited time I have as a single mum who can only work during school time to do as much to support people and offer them flexibility.
Yeah. And like, I really, really appreciate your honesty in this because there's so much smoke and mirrors around coaching prices and stuff. So just the transparency is really refreshing. Thank you for that. Because so many coaches, it is this game of manipulation, and then they'll get you into this heightened emotional state, and then they'll pitch to you on the call and make it feel like it's going to go away in 30 seconds. And then you sign for it to go away. It's a lot. I think that you've offered an interesting perspective. And one of the things I'm going to think of when I come back to this conversation, whenever your name pops into my head, is research, that you are doing things in a research-based way, and that there are ethical research-based ways of doing packages and higher fee stuff. I do want a bit of challenge in this as well. We don't have to see everything in the same way because I want to stretch my thinking as well. Just because some people do like dodgy high fee stuff doesn't mean that everyone who's doing high fee is unethical, because you've just explained very clearly the rationale for why that is going to help the client get the better outcome. And how you're also flexible. I have heard some horror stories where people are paying, 4 and 5 figures, and then it ends up just being a group program with very light contact with the coach. And it's just like, wow, that is just rinsing people of their money and not actually focused on the client.
Yeah, that's community coaching. I am in community coaching for entrepreneurs, but you have to be at a specific level in your business or to be able to come and once a month you'll see the mentor and then you've got the homework. Like, it's not for everybody. And yes, and people are trying to do less and charge more money. I have a limited amount of time that I can offer to clients, and I can't take on 30 clients a week, and that would burn me out anyway. So I do need to look at how I'm structuring my work. But equally, no one's pressurized to work with me. It is, if it's right for you, it's right for you right now. If it's not, it's not. There's no shaming. People use shame tactics as well. I hate it.
Yeah. So, I mean, One of the other things I'm curious about as we're exploring the intersections between the different areas of like coaching and therapy and psychology is this difference, I guess, in the status of therapy and coaching. When you and I were chatting offline, you said you'd been discussing with your mentor, why do they need to be two separate things? What is the difference? Can they be blended? What are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there seems to be like turf wars that are going on social media, and there also seems to be pricing differences as well. So there'll be therapists, psychologists, and coaches. Those are the three broad categories that I'm seeing. People also have very rigid views on what therapy is versus what coaching is. So people just automatically assume that therapy is about looking at the past and understanding the past, and there's no forward movement. That's wrong. There are therapeutic approaches that support the client to move forwards. They exist. They've now becoming more mainstream in therapy practice, how therapists are working with their clients. And then people think coaching is just about the present day, moving them forwards to achieve their goals. So there's a misunderstanding. Actually, as a coach, I do need to dip back into the person's past a little, but we don't dwell there, to understand how is your past showing up in your present day? How is it impacting you from achieving your goals and the overall well-being that you want to achieve for yourself? So we do need to have some insight. We do need to have a bit of awareness. So we do need to understand how our past is impacting us today, becoming aware of that. Maybe how we're responding to things that are happening us in life. So there's people who have got they put them in compartments. That's therapy, that's coaching, and that's the divide. Actually, as a coaching psychologist, I cross both, but I'm very boundaried. So we do look at the past and how it shows up in the present day. We do a bit of exploration. Most people who come to me, in fact, actually to say all people that are currently with me have had therapy, so they've got good insight and awareness. And then we need that as a foundation to understand why we're behaving, thinking, and feeling the way that we are. And then when we've got that understanding, we can start to move forwards from where we are now and where we want to get to. And I coach people to go through that journey. So thinking that they're that's therapy and that's coaching doesn't work within coaching psychology. I'm bridging the two. You'll find a lot of coaching psychologists, a clinical psychologist, a health psychologist, our therapists, our occupational psychologists. So they bring those kind of ways of practicing, thinking, the approaches into their coaching work. So it's about understanding that there is an overlap, but there is a boundary. No coach should be coaching to treat somebody's bipolar, schizophrenia. If people are in psychosis, they shouldn't be coming to you, shouldn't be coaching them. You should be directing them to where they need to go to. You need to be able to assess as a coach whether that person in front of you is able to engage in a coaching relationship. I've had people turn up and they're very disconnected. They may actually sometimes be in psychosis. I need to be able to do an assessment, which I always do, to check whether I need to direct them to a GP, a clinical psychologist, or a therapist. I think the key message there was, it's not in strict compartments or boxes. There is an overlap, but there are boundaries, and we need to be clear on what the boundaries are. We're not treating, as a coach, I'm not treating your mental health per se. I have a very specific role to do with you, and if you need to have I hate using the word mental health because it's about the whole body, but if you're needing support because you have bipolar or schizophrenia, that I'm not the person for you. But I know that coaches are saying that they're trauma trained and trauma informed and trying to treat trauma when they're not trained. And that's very, very risky.
It is. It's an evolving field or fields. So I don't think that there is any easy answer to this. So there are roles. I trained as a hybrid coach therapist because I'm like, it doesn't make any sense to split a person up into half of their timeline. So you're only allowed to work with the past and you're only allowed to work with the present. And, because the past is showing up in our present and is in our future. And so I do think that integrative coach therapist practitioners will be a lot more relevant in the future. And I think actually the thread where we met was this, I won't say the name obviously, but there's some quite obnoxious male coach who doesn't seem to actually know how to coach ethically, but has lots of opinions on what a coach is, doesn't believe in supervision, believes that only like mentally ill, poor performing people, low status people go to therapists. I mean, it was just a hugely stigmatizing view. And the thing is, this is affecting people getting support. I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday thinking, I don't want to get a therapist in case people think there's something wrong with me. And actually, some of the highest performing people have therapists, but there's still this massive stigma here. Unlike California, where I grew up, where everyone has a therapist. You've got, your hairdresser, your therapist, your dog groomer, whatever. But yes, I think that I would like to see more of a shift towards that, where it's just part of your self-care. I guess what's still kind of what I'm curious about is, when do people know whether they need a therapist or a coach?
So I think this is a good one. I'll just reflect on myself. I needed a therapist when I needed to really resolve things that had happened in the past. I need to work through them, okay? So I needed to go into the past and work through the trauma that I experienced, aspects of my childhood. And I needed to unpack that. And I needed someone to hold space for me to hear about the abuse and just work through that. So I really was focused on working through what happened in the past to make sense of it. That gave me a good foundation to then go work with a coach, bringing all that insight and awareness to start moving forwards. I want to go back to work. I want to achieve this. I want to be able to do that. And so that was where the coach and a mentor came in for me. But I choose coaches and mentors that have a good psychological or therapeutic background. I don't go to coaches who are not trauma informed, that don't understand how our past shapes our present day. So I always seek out coaches and mentors who have had some training in trauma, being trauma informed and understanding that, because it's critical for moving me forward as somebody who has experienced that in my life. So I'm not going to go and seek a life coach who hasn't got any of that. I'm going to seek somebody who uses evidence. And I agree with what you said. People seek out coaches because going to a therapist is, could be seen as shameful. And actually, what they do need is a therapist. Sometimes people go to a therapist. Actually, what they need is a coach because they're wanting to work on specific goals related to work. So it's just about understanding where you're at and what you want to explore and excavate. If you want to excavate the past, don't go to a coach, go to a therapist. They're better skilled at doing that. So it just depends where you're at and where you want to go to.
And could you share for the people listening, because you mentioned how, you look for certain qualities when you are looking for a coach or mentor. Is there a kind of checklist of things that people should look out for and things to avoid when they're choosing like a competent and ethical coach?
Yeah, it's interesting because people automatically go and say, check their credentials, but I've worked with people highly credentialed and absolutely dreadful in their practice. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I would want to ensure that the person I'm working with has some training and background, and that training and background is aligns with a professional body because they will have to have learnt some ethics. I would also look at their history, like how long have they been doing this? I'm not saying we should exclude newly qualified coaches, but kind of look at, have they just all of a sudden, out of a long history of doing something else, become a therapist or coach? You kind of want someone that's done it for a little while and got some experience. Sorry to all the newbies. But like, that's just what I'm like. I would want to ask lots of questions. So does the coach give you time to ask questions? And I'll be asking, what's your lived experience? I like, if people are not willing to talk a bit about their own lived experience, can I say therapists don't do this at all? You can't get an ounce out of them about their lived experience of their issues at all.
That's another pet peeve of mine.
That's a whole other thing. That's a whole
Exactly.
other thing. But just ask them, can they talk to you a bit about their lived experience, why they do what they do? Is it evidence-based? Like, why do they coach the way that they coach? Why do they use the approaches? Why are the approaches that they use good for solving the problem that you've got or helping you? Do they talk to you in a human way, or do you sense it's the power imbalance where they're just sort of telling you they're the authority, they know the best? Is it just a conversation like we're having now? Are you able to feel comfortable to challenge them? Some people don't. Is that person supervised? I think that's quite important. We don't know about the quality of supervision, but by the virtue of the fact they're open to being supervised, having a coach or mentoring says something about them. And then if they're on social media, go check out what they post and go into the comment section and look at how they comment. Just go look at how they're engaging and the depth of the comments and the depth of their posts. That will tell you something about them. So that's quite a lot to take on, actually. That can feel really overwhelming for somebody who just wants to get some help. And big warning, don't go by testimonials. People can make that up or get their mates to give testimonials. I had somebody ask me last week if I could give them testimonials because their parents wanted to see testimonials before handing over money. And I explained to them, I don't ask my clients for testimonials. I just don't think it's right to ask them. If they want to leave one at the end, lovely. People have come to me where they've joined courses and programs where there was loads of testimonials to find out that people had been asked to give those at the very beginning where people are really motivated and hyped up to give, but not at the end. And so people can be misrepresented. So don't just go by because people have got testimonials and social proof. It's not always authentic and true. So be mindful. Have a conversation with the person and see how that person comes off in the conversation. That's your testimonial.
Well, I feel like honestly we could probably record 10 episodes on this topic. But as we're approaching the end of this, just a couple more questions for you.
Yeah,
And then
sure.
maybe we'll do a part 2 on another day.
Yeah.
With the changes in the field and all of that, I mean, what do you think is the way forward? And if you could wave a magic wand and change things, like what would you change with the way that things are?
Oh, that's a really big question.
Yeah, no pressure. Just fix everything. And
I've questioned whether regulation is really the way forward. Should we regulate the coaching industry? Is that going to make any improvements? I don't know. I think there is value to regulating coaches. There is definitely value, but I think it might cause a whole nother set of problems as well, because then are we making it accessible to people who want to become coaches? They don't necessarily have all the money to be members. Yeah, it's expensive. I just say it's expensive. Training and stuff. So, regulation is about making sure that people tick certain boxes as well, and that they give evidence that they tick that box. There's a part of that that's good. But having worked on what's called the revalidation of nurses and midwives and doctors and stuff, because that's all my past work, there'll always be people who slips through the cracks. There'll always be people that do harm, sometimes intentionally and not intentionally. Regulating doesn't mean it's always going to give the desired impact we want. But I think the real key is actually educating the public. I think that's where it comes. I think that we need to do a better job of telling the public what a good coach looks like, what they should expect from, what therapy is, and really kind of getting that out to people. And so I need to think, where would that start? How would we do that? Maybe it would start in school, about educating children about the value of coaching and therapies and what to look for in these trusted practitioners. Maybe it's our NHS, our healthcare system, doing a better job of communicating this to people. Maybe it's also the British Psychological Society who needs to do a better job of communicating what coaching psychologist is and what that means. I don't think they've done a good enough job, and I've said that to them. And they'll probably listen to this podcast and hear it. So, I think the first thing is education, and then maybe thinking about some level of regulation, but not to stifle people and not to stop people from becoming coaches and making it too expensive. Do you see what I mean? So I don't have a clear-cut answer, but I truly believe it does come from educating the public, giving information to the public so that they can trust who's a good coach. What does that mean? What's a good therapist? What does that mean? I don't think we do enough of it.
that was an amazing answer.
It's a hard one to answer because we're addressing that at the moment. No one's got a right or wrong answer. It's something that needs to be explored and tested.
Absolutely. And there's so many different groups involved as well. It's
Mm.
like right now, the British Psychological Society is regulating coaches to an extent, aren't they?
It's not. So if you want to become chartered, which is what I'm doing, I'm going through a recognition route. I have to give like my life's work, and I've got to meet certain standards and put all the evidence, and then I'm interviewed. I'm going through that now, submitting in December. It's not regulated, but it is gives some level of assurance that when I get the chartered part of my title, so chartership is, you can't use it, it's legal, like you have to have been given it. It gives some assurance to the public, and they do intend next year to have some form of regulating the title. I might be picked by chance to give my evidence. It doesn't mean I have to submit every year like the other professions, but they may come to me and say, hey, I want to see your CPD, we want to see your supervision log, and I'm going to need to have it to hand. So it's not regulating the way they regulate clinical psychologists, doctors, nurses, and other practitioners. But I think they're trying to kind of move towards a way that feels comfortable and doable for the profession.
I wonder if there's a way to kind of collaborate with some of the other coaching organizations, because I guess one of the risks with what's happening right now is that the people who are coaching psychologists end up having all of this regulation, but then everyone else can just be a cowboy if they want to, because they're outside of that framework. And so you've got kind of two different standards going on. So how can we lift the whole field? And a partnership or collaboration or...
Yeah. I haven't seen it, but it might exist, but I haven't come across it. I think that the professional bodies like the ICF, there's actually the International Society of Coaching Psychologists as well. I think that's what they call them. I'm not a member of them, though. I think they do need to come together. I do think they need to kind of share information, share resources, and be more aligned and support each other instead of, psychologists over here, these types of coaches over there. I think there needs to be more joined up work. But that basically is healthcare in itself. There needs to be more, let's look at how healthcare join up across the country on certain things. Why can't the professional bodies do that too? They might be having conversations, I don't know, but I'm not seeing it. If I'm not seeing it, the public's not seeing it. So I think there needs to be conversations, but just even us doing this is helpful. Just us having a conversation as professionals in our industry, sharing our knowledge, sharing it on LinkedIn, commenting on each other's posts, challenging each other is also the way forwards as well. And just having these open conversations and keep having them. We also have a responsibility to be part of that process. We can't just leave it to the professional bodies or the regulators.
Totally. And thank you so much. That's exactly why I want to do this podcast, to open up the conversation, to raise awareness, to generate conversation, and to be part of shaping the way forward instead of just passive spectators. So it's been absolutely amazing talking with you. Just to wrap up, can you share how can people find you, like social media, website, and anything else that you want people to know?
I'm mainly on LinkedIn, Christina Theo, and I've also started a Substack, Christina Theo. You'll find me there. The reason why I've started Substack is because I want to be able to provide people with more free resources, and I can do that there. And my website's nearly finished. It will be christinatheo.com. I'll be sharing resources. It takes time to develop them. I want to make sure they're good quality ones, but they will be there by Christmas. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to have this discussion. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time and the discourse that we have in the comment section on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. I'll see you in the comments.
Yeah. Take care.
Take care.